G'day guys, welcome to my RXY's feature video. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about NRL Round 10 recap preview for 2020 guys, so let's get started. So the first match of that game is the Roosters going up against Raiders. Now this game is going to be this game was absolutely really good cracking game of football. But these two teams were really dominating each other last year since the Roosters won that game. But now it's turned into an absolute blinder of a match, and apparently the Raiders won for this year's game. Absolutely blinder of a match. 24-20 the scoreline was, and I took the Roosters by 10 points, and they obviously lost by 4 points. So let's have a look at the Roosters tries. So we have Brett Morris that obviously scored a double, which means 2 tries, and Matt Ikuvalu, one of the really good players that scores so many tries, but he only scored 1 for that match to make it that game. But let's have a look at the Raiders tries. So what we have here is Dinama Salui, Jared Croker, George Williams, and Josh Papali. I tell you, Josh Papali's gone so well. He's been growing into a really great player, and I just think for their club to have him, he's just going to have a blinder of a season, and I just think that what he puts into that team, he puts in great effort for the club. But credit to him, he's a really great player anyway. But my player of the game for number 5 in this match was Brett Morris from the Sydney Roosters. He was obviously a really good player that obviously stand out for that game. When he gets the ball, he's just so dangerous, and just when he scores tries, scores them perfectly. But he's just like a really good finisher anyway, that obviously scores tries. But what a great game it was. It was quite a close game anyway, but I did tip the Roosters though by 10 points anyway. The next game of that round, we see the Storm going up against the Titans. Now this game was certainly a really great game of football, and I tell you, Melbourne Storm just killed it out there. Killed it. And what I mean by killed it is they just blew across the park, and honestly, I tell you, that game was obviously a really good matchup at Sunshine Coast Stadium in Queensland, north of Brisbane anyway. But I did tip the Storm by 20 points, and they obviously won by a big margin, 42 points to 6. And the only try that scored for the Titans was Brian Kelly. He is obviously a great player in that team. But what we have here for the Storm tries is what I say is Cameron Munster, Josh Adokar scored 2 tries, Nelson Asafa-Solomone scored 2 tries also too, and Branko Lee and Brandon Smith anyway. So Nelson Asafa-Solomone, he is a great player also too, that just leads into that club, and I tell you, he is obviously a great player to balance that team out anyway. But my player of the game, certainly for that game, was Josh Adokar, number 5 in that game. Obviously just blew across the park when he scored that from the intercept, when someone obviously accidentally passed it, and then Josh Adokar just sprint down the field and obviously scored the try anyway. What a great game it was. Certainly an absolutely great match for that game. But I did tip the Storm by 20 points, and they obviously won by a big margin. But I tell you, Melbourne Storm are a really great team, and they obviously are building a club, because they are building a absolute great team for the players in there that are obviously playing a really good match of football anyway. But I tell you, what a great match of football anyway by this team. Certainly, for the Titans though, they need to have that capability to obviously win games of football all the time, but certainly if you're going up against the Melbourne Storm, I don't think they're going to win anyway. The next game of that round, we see the West Tigers going up against the Broncos. Now this team, oh my god, I tell you, the West Tigers blew across the park. Wow, this game was certainly on top. 48 points to nil, the scoreline was, and I tell ya, that game was certainly a firing up match. But I think it was raining there too, which was a bit slippery, so it maintained that slipperiness. But I tell ya, it was pretty difficult for that match anyway. But I tell you, the West Tigers though blew it across the park again. But I did tip the West Tigers by 8 points, and they certainly won by 48 points. And I tell you, that game was certainly a really good match. But I tell you, for the Broncos though, they need to have that capability if you want to play a really good matchup. But unfortunately though, they didn't win this game. They were kept scoreless, and they didn't score any tries at all, which was very, very, very disappointing for their team and for their club too, and for their staff and coaches and everything like that. But I tell you, they would have been so disappointed how the way they would play it anyway. But let's have a look at the West Tigers tries anyway. So what we have here is David Nofaluma, Harry Grant, Luciano Leilua scored 2 tries, Benji Marshall, Luke Garner scored 2 tries, Sam McIntyre, and Billy Walters. Billy Walters played an absolute great game, and I tell you, he's stepping the mark there, and he's just really like a great player for their club anyway. But my player of the game, certainly for number 9 for the West Tigers, that came from the Melbourne Storm, Harry Grant. Harry Grant is just an absolute great player that just teaches people how to play football anyway, but he also got taught from I think it was Josh Reynolds or Benji Marshall, I believe. But yeah, I think it was just a really good matchup, and yeah, well done to the West Tigers for making this win up against the Broncos anyway. The next game of this round, we see the Dragons going up against the Bulldogs. Now that game was just absolutely top-notch game, and I tell ya, Dragons were really on top of their game. But for the Bulldogs though, they played a really good matchup in the first half, but in the second half they just played really sloppy, and I tell ya, that game was just really poor for them. Absolutely poor, and I tell ya, like, they're sitting last in the ladder, and they really want to deserve to sit last on the ladder if you're going to keep losing every single matchup. But I tipped the Dragons by 12 points, and they obviously won 28 points to 22 in that game. But it was a close game, and I really thought that the Bulldogs were going to win this game. But then, when the pass came into Marcelo Montoya's hands, he accidentally hit his knee and then rolled backwards. And then obviously Corey Norman picked it up and ran a couple of meters to score a running try anyway in that match. But I tell you, well done to the Dragons for keeping that game a really good matchup anyway. But let's have a look at the Bulldogs tries. So what we have here is Jeremy Marshall-King, Nick Meaney, and Raymond Vatala-Mariner. So Nick Meaney is a really good player to stand out for that game, like any type of game anyway. But what we have here for the Dragons tries is Matt Duffy scored 2 tries, double, well done for him. Yuan Aiken, Jason Saab, and Corey Norman, as I just mentioned before. So my player of the game, certainly for number 1, he's just improving every single time I see him play. It definitely goes to number 1 for the Dragons, Matt Duffy anyway. He's a great player that just stands out for that game, and I tell you, well done for him for making 2 tries in that game, a winning game anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Rabbitohs going up against the Knights. Now, this game was really... I was there at that match. I did vlog that game, actually. So if you have a look at my YouTube channel, it's definitely RXYSV2. And I did post that Rabbitohs vs Knights round 10 or 9 vlog anyway, so check that out anyway. Definitely hit that thumbs up for the subscribe anyway. So yeah, it was definitely a really difficult game. That was. Knights had it on top in the first half. They were playing brilliant, absolutely brilliant across the park. But I tell you, This guy, this guy just certainly does the team. Certainly does for the team. Bradman Best, he's a really good finisher. He's just fast and knows how to play football really well. But I did tip the Rabbitohs by 6 points. They obviously lost by 2 points. 2 points. 20 points to 18 the scoreline was, and I tell you, the Rabbitohs were just sloppy, and I just think that they did not play a really good game of football anyway. But let's have a look at the night's tries anyway. So what we have here is Anari Tuolala, can't say it right, Kurt Mann, Kalen Ponga, and Bradman Best, as I mentioned before. And what we have here for the Rabbitohs tries is Mark Nichols and Damien Cook scored 2 tries. Absolutely great player this guy is. Number 9, he's just absolutely a really top-notch player. But I did tip the Rabbitohs by 6 points though too, and I obviously lost by 2 points anyway. But well done for Newcastle Knights for holding on for that win anyway. And I just think that that game was really tight match anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Manly Sea Eagles going up against the Eels. Now, this game was really, well, average game of football, but Manly just really stood out in that game, and they came up on top to win this game, and they came out firing, absolutely came out firing in that match. But without Dylan Walker and Tom Trbojevic is a really good player, but he didn't play for that match because he's injured. Certainly is Dylan Walker also too. But I did tip the Eels by 14 points, and I obviously lost by I think 4 points, I believe. 22 points to 18 that scoreline was. Very close game that was, but cannot believe that Wonga Blake obviously scored a try after a runaway try that just blew me away. But let's have a look at Manly tries anyway. So what we have here is Martin Tupou, Daly Cherry Evans, Danny Levi, and Joel Thompson. Joel Thompson's a bit quiet. I don't really see him score that much. So is Danny Levi. I don't see him score that often too. But let's have a look at the Eels tries anyway. So what we have here is Michael Jennings scored 2 tries. Wonga Blake and George Jennings. George Jennings just really is an okay player, but just doesn't really play a lot of great football that much. I don't say he's terrible. I say he plays a 50-50 alright game, like sometimes. But my player of the game, certainly for this number 6 bloke for Parramatta Eels, I just think he really stood out there and just gave it a top-notch game. My player of the game was definitely number 6 for the Parramatta Eels, was Dylan Brown anyway. He was just a really good player that just brings to that game finisher. But I tell you, that game was just a really good matchup anyway, but it certainly was tight in average anyway. The next game of that match, we see the Warriors going up against the Sharks. Now, this game was really good from Central Coast Stadium. The Sharks just came out on top and just blew the Warriors across the park. And I cannot believe that the Sharks are a really good team and they just keep firing up in that match. But I did tip the Sharks by 18 points, and they certainly won 46 points to 10 in that scoreline. Well done to the Sharks for winning that game. And I tell you, credit to them because they are an absolutely great team to obviously play against. But for the Warriors though, hate to say, they are a really good team, but they just struggle a little bit. And in that match, for the Warriors, I hate to say that they are a really good team, but I just feel so sorry for them anyway, because they're struggling like so much, and felt like I need to give credit to them, but fortunately I didn't, because I tipped the Sharks instead of the Warriors, unfortunately. But let's have a look at the Warriors tries anyway. So what we have here is Ken Mamalo and Wade Egan. Ken Mamalo and Wade Egan are very good players in that match. But let's have a look at the Sharks tries anyway. So what we have here is Braden Hamlin-Uele, William Kennedy, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Sean Johnson, Sione Katoa scored 2 tries, and Jesse Ramien. Jesse Ramien is having a really good matchup anyway. He always does. But my player of the game, certainly number 2 for the Cronulla Sharks, is Sione Katoa. He is absolutely killing it every single time he gets the ball and just scores a number of tries all the time. But I tipped the Sharks by 18 points, and they certainly won 46-10. And I cannot believe a really well done game for that match anyway. But credit to the Sharks for winning that match up against the Warriors anyway. And last but certainly not least, we see the Panthers going up against the Cowboys. Now, this game was average game, and the first half for the Cowboys, they played a really great game of football. But in the second half, they were struggling a lot. And I mean struggling a lot. Because you can't just pass it one out all the time. And if you do, it's like you won't be able to get to that possession like really good. But I don't think that Cowboys had a lot of good talent in there. But they just need to aim up their game just to balance it out for their squad anyway, and for their football team anyway. But let's have a look at the Cowboys tries anyway. So what we have here is Hamiso Tibawai-Fidau and Dejan Arce. Dejan Arce played a really good matchup. He's just a really good player that just stands out across the park for their club. But he's really a top-notch finisher. He's really fast anyway, so I just think that he does a great job for the Cowboys, and I just think he does. But I think he's going to play for the next match anyway. But let's have a look at the Panthers try. So what we have here is Jerome Lolai, Brent Naden, Stephen Crichton, and Nathan Cleary. Nathan Cleary is a really good player that just stands out across the park, and he's just really smart to offload any ball. Really good. He has that timing right, and he just certainly comes across the park and then obviously finishes it, or either dummies in and runs off with the ball. But that last try, that last finish, I didn't expect that anyway. I thought it was going to be like 16-10, but it just came out on top for Nathan Cleary and just scored his own try to kick his goal to make it 22-10. And I did tip the Panthers by 8 points, and they obviously won. But my player of the game, certainly in that match, goes to Nathan Cleary, number 7 from the Panthers anyway. Thanks guys for watching my video, guys. Stay tuned for more. I will be doing a couple of videos coming to you guys soon. Also, I'll be doing more videos coming to you guys soon, so stay tuned for more. Plus, leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and for this video. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Till then, take care guys. Stay safe and have a good one. Plus, let's get up to 200 subscribers. We're sitting on 165 anyway, so that means that's a halfway point of that margin. So let's get up to 200 subscribers, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care and have a good one.